Hi there, my name is Zach. I'm with a company called Urban Plantations. We run the organic garden on site here at Qualcomm. I'm the manager of the farms operation of the company, and today I guess we'll be talking about kind of how the summer has gone so far. I'll go over some tomato pruning, some pesticide use, some organic pesticide use. For the different pests that we're seeing, because it's summer and everybody's awake, and all kinds of fun little bugs out there. I'll show you what an ear of corn should look like when it's ready to be harvested, because that's a really confusing one. And then I think I'll go over some citrus care stuff with you. I'll show you what maybe some pest indications look like, give you some tips on citrus. I guess we'll just get into it. So summertime, probably this time of the season, you're probably looking at all your plants and they're really big and like probably producing fruit at this point. They're probably seeing maybe some pressure from some caterpillars or aphids. You're probably seeing on tomatoes, you're probably seeing like a lot of dead leaves on the inside. Just so you know, that's actually pretty normal. We spend a lot of time cleaning out tomatoes. As I'm going to show you in a few minutes, I'll show you what our tomatoes look like for production. Now that in mind, this summer has been, at least on the coast where we're at Qualcomm in Sorrento Valley, has been a bit challenging in that the temperatures have been kind of cold. The mornings have been cold. Any temperature under 65 degrees is gonna kind of lean towards getting into problems with your fruit on your tomatoes or peppers or eggplants or any of the things that are fruiting. And you're probably gonna see a little bit of what's called blossom end rot. And that's when the fruit on the tomato, for example, on a tomato plant, when a tomato's on and it seems to be fine, but then on the bottom it's black. It's just rot, like black and rotting. So that's called blossom end rot. That is either a sign that you have a calcium deficiency in your soil, which you can fix with the liquid bone meal. That's a product you can get from most nurseries. What you would do is buy the liquid bone meal and then mix it with water. The liquid bone meal is 0,12,0, so it's really strong. So use it sparingly. So maybe just a capful in a gallon water jug, watering can, would probably be adequate for that. The bone meal has a lot of calcium and stuff in it that's going to help with fruit setting and help you not get blossom end rot if it is a calcium deficiency. The other thing to keep in mind is, like I was talking about with temperatures and calcium deficiencies, is that calcium is an immobile nutrient, which means that it takes energy to move. And since most of these plants do their growing at night, if the nighttime temperatures are too cold, that plant no longer has the energy to move that calcium where it needs to go, which is generally new growth and to the fruit. So along with blossom end rot, you'll probably see, you might be, because you might not, but you might be seeing some of the new growth on your peppers and tomatoes, like really crinkling together and not growing right. They might look like they're very dry, they might look crispy, but green, but like crispy. And this is a sign of a calcium deficiency that's brought on by cooler nighttime temperatures. Generally, this time of the season, we should be easily getting to at least 70 degrees at night throughout the night, so we're not really having a problem with these deficiencies. So, because it's been cooler, you might be seeing some of that. I wouldn't be super alarmed, even though it is difficult to deal with. But for blossom end rot, you just pull the fruit off that's rotting, and then the next round should be better because the nighttime temperatures have warmed up, or you've put the liquid bone meal into your soil and the calcium gets absorbed pretty quickly in a water-based form. And it's plant soluble because it's in water. So those might be some issues that you're seeing, and those are a couple of things, reasons for and solutions for those. Now, if you are seeing the little powdery spots on your leaves, that's called powdery mildew. So that will look like this. And the leaf doesn't have to be yellow. It could be perfectly green and have these powdery spots on it. That's what's called powdery mildew. It's a very, very prevalent fungal disease that is going around, especially this year with these cool temperatures. One way to combat this, if you catch it early enough, is to get some neem oil. This is just one brand of many of neem oils that you can use. This again, this cap full into a watering can, or hopefully you can use a little spray bottle and spray the leaves. It's a non-contact pesticide, so it means you have to spray those powdery spots. But this can help knock it back. The unfortunate thing about powdery mildew though is that it's a systemic fungus. So generally when you're seeing it on the leaves, it's already infected the whole plant. And then the name of the game at that point is to knock it back as far as you can so that that plant can produce as much fruit as possible. Now, if you notice powdery mildew happening on your tomatoes or squash, then the best thing to do is to do the sprays, but anything that's very, very infected, just cut it off. Those little white things are spores of the fungus, and they can spread around your garden and infect other things. When the tomato or squash finally is ready to pull out of the ground because the fungal disease has taken it over and you can't get any more fruit out of it because it's just really not a healthy plant, make sure to discard that into the trash. But another thing we do is tomato pruning. So when you're growing your tomatoes, they will start putting off dead growth here. All this growth will die up and under here, and most of all the top will be alive, and the fruit will set. And what you want to do is prune in a way that's going to allow this fruit to get some sun, but not too much sun, because you can get, these things can get sunburned. And unfortunately there's no suntan lotion for tomatoes that I know of. But they want to get some sun, but not a lot of sun. So having a canopy like this is great. This is a little bit harder than I would generally prune my tomatoes, but like I said, we had a fungal disease. So very important thing is to have airflow to keep the fungal disease down and keep these things going so that we can get these green tomatoes off them. Once we get these green tomatoes off them, when they're all ripened up and everything, we'll pull these plants and throw them in the trash and plant a new thing that we can get through the rest of the summer. But fun thing, because I just saw him, you might be seeing these fun guys on your tomatoes. If I can get them off. These lovely creatures are called tomato hornworms. They can be a very, very big problem. Generally, like I just pulled him off the top of the growth up on the top of the tomato. What you want to do when you're checking your tomatoes is look at the top growth of your tomatoes, because generally these worms are gonna focus on the new top growth. It's a really good indicator, not always, but it's a really good indicator to see if you have them. Like this guy was up here chomping on this. You'll see it a lot on the top. The best way to combat this is a product called, and I'll just put him in there for now, is a product called BT. BT stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacterial species that's specific to caterpillars. And what it does is you spray it, you add this, maybe a capful to a spray bottle again, and you spray all the leaves all over the place, and this bacteria will sit on the leaves, and when the caterpillar comes through and eats the leaves, the bacteria will infect them and they will get a virus and die. It takes about 3 days for them to stop eating, and then they'll kind of shrivel up there and die. This is a really good one, but a note about this is that it's specific to caterpillars. So if you're concerned about swallowtail caterpillars or the monarch caterpillars, be very, very careful in using this, as it will affect them as well. So make sure you're specifically targeting your tomato plants or whatever plant that you're having a caterpillar problem on. Because if it gets on a milkweed and those monarch caterpillars get it, they're gonna die from this as well. So just keeping that in mind, because we like our garden friends, just not those certain ones. So that being said, that's a really good synopsis of tomato care at this point. This point in the season, when they're putting on fruit and they got growth going on, it's a really good idea to throw some organic fertilizer down for them. A really well balanced nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium mix would be really good, and then you throw it in a powder form around the root balls and scratch it in, and maybe water it in with some fish emulsion and some bone meal, and giving them a good feeding, and then they'll last you through the rest of the season, as long as they're not heavily diseased like some of our tomatoes are this year. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is how to tell what corn looks like when it's ready to be harvested, because I know that can be really confusing. A lot of people have problems telling what's a ripe ear of corn and what's not. I have to train people most of the time on what to look for in a ripe ear of corn. So I'll show you what one would look like. Now, this corn is a little bit towards the end of its season, so I'm not confident that a full ear is alive in there right now, but this is what it should look like. If you've grown corn, you know that they put little hairs out called tassels out of the ears of corn, and the anther will drop pollen on here, and when these ears of corn, these hairs are pollinated, then it makes a kernel of corn. So each one of these hairs is a kernel of corn in your ear of corn. So when the tassels are brown and sort of dead looking, and the ear of corn is swollen, then your ear of corn is ready and it's going to be beautiful and delicious. So that's a really good way to just look for these tassels being brown and dead. You might notice on your citrus trees that they're putting off new growth, that they're putting on flowers, because they're going to start to set fruit here in the next couple months, and generally citruses are harvested in winter time. But what you'll notice, because there's so much new growth here, is that you'll notice that some of your new leaves start to curl and get aphids like this, and so you're going to see thrips and aphids in there. Generally, that's what's going to go on in here. So how to fix this is to get some safer soap in a spray bottle and spray it all with the safer soap and water mixture. So safer soap is an insecticidal soap. You can find it at most nurseries or garden stores. Even Home Depot has it. And you will take about a capful of that and put it into a spray bottle mixed with water, and then you just spray it. It's an on-contact organic pesticide, so you're going to spray it directly onto these things, these aphids and thrips, and you're going to then let it sit for about 5 minutes, get a hose and do a hard water spray, and just spray it with a hose, and these little bugs will spray right off. Generally, you're going to see a lot of ants in conjunction with aphids, and that's because ants are like little farmers themselves, in that they farm these aphids. They will bring these aphids from other plants and put them on this plant, because the aphids secrete sugar when they start to decompose the leaves. They secrete sugar out of their back ends, and the ants come and take the sugar water back to their nest. So these ants are literally farming these aphids right now. So it's like I'm a farmer battling other little farmers. That's one thing you can do for those, and that's generally effective. Generally, you will have to do it a few times and stay on top of it, but it'll save you a lot of trouble from getting really, really infected and getting things like scale, which are like tiny little mollusks that you then have to hard water spray as well. But those are a real problem because they can get really tricky to find, and you can have a scale infestation and not even know it. Generally, scale is going to infect the branches here and the middles of the leaves. I know this doesn't have scale, but if it did, it would be here and in here and fully covering the branch there. Those can also be hard water sprayed off without any serious use of pesticides. It's a really good way to do it. Just remember that when you're irrigating your citrus trees really like to get a good amount of water and then dry out. They really enjoy that kind of watering schedule because they are endemic to semi-arid regions. So that means they get a little rain, but then they dry out. And then they may get a little rain and then dry out. So they really like that kind of watering schedule. Well, that's about all we have for you this time. We'll see you on Tuesday for Chef Arnold making a salad in the kitchen with some of the lovely produce that's coming out of our garden right now. And happy gardening. Hope all is well.